Hi guys, it's me. I'm still alive. Hope you guys are all doing well. Um, I'm coming to you from the Boxing Hall of Fame in Canastota, New York. So let's see if we can get a nice shot of that. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to talk to you about Chapter 6, some of the highlights in Chapter 6 about anxiety and arousal. So basically the form of the chapter is the physiological aspects of it, then the psychological aspects, and the assessment of anxiety and arousal. So in terms of physiology, the easiest thing to do is remember basically, how you might feel in any sort of state of anxiety. Some of you may have some sort of level of test anxiety, some anxiety that may be involved with the sport, or, hopefully not, but it wouldn't be too surprising that in a class this size, somebody might have an actual anxiety disorder. So again, think physiologically what would happen in that case in terms of anxiety. Okay, physiologically, the brain parts that are involved are the reticular formation and also the hypothalamus. The autonomic nervous system, also very important, as you can read in the chapter. Basically, that controls glands and organs such as the lungs, the heart, and also the adrenal gland in particular, which secretes adrenaline or epinephrine. So again, a lot of you have heard of adrenaline in terms of somebody being an adrenaline junkie, for example. Again, that would be the adrenaline gland would secrete adrenaline in periods of high stress like this. Okay, going on to the psych aspects. Okay, two major aspects are whether it's trait or state anxiety. Trait anxiety is the normal type of personality that a person would have. So you may know people that are generally tend to be anxious all the time, and people who don't get anxious about anything. So again, that would be more of a personality trait. Okay, what the book focuses more on is state anxiety. That is situational. So two aspects of that are whether it's cognitive or somatic. Cognitive would be, again, those things that relate to sports or thoughts, excuse me, and also, somatic would be anything physiologically related. Okay, so the key thing about the relationship between performance and anxiety is that with any sort of anxiety, the with any sort of cognitive anxiety, performance goes down, and with physiological arousal and anxiety, then there is a inverted U-shaped curve known as the Yerkes-Dodson law, where you have a certain amount of arousal that increases performance till it hits a peak, and then after that, you get too anxious or too aroused, which results in anxiety, which would result in decreased performance after that peak level. Okay, one of the things that also is mentioned in the notes is the idea that Martin's has in terms of pre-competition anxiety. That would be that, again, the idea is that if you go into a competition with anxiety, your performance is going to suffer. So what you want to do is have lower pre-competition anxiety, and what would yield that would be self-efficacy, the thought that you are going to be succeeding at a particular task. The problem with pre-competition anxiety, if it does get too great, is that it will result in poor performance. So what happens after that? You go in anxious, you have poor performance, so what happens next time? Your confidence is down, so your anxiety goes up, self-efficacy goes down, and what happens again? Performance goes down again. So it could result in this, cycling down of performance. So you really, especially with youth athletes, you really want to break that cycle. Okay? All right, so that explains the that slide about Martin's. All right, so then the other major thing is how do we actually assess anxiety. So there's paper and pencil tests, self-report tests such as the CSAQ or the SCAT, or the CSAI. in both those cases, in terms of CSAI and CSAQ, the CS stands for cognitive and somatic. So there are going to be items on these certain paper and pencil tests or self-report tests that basically say, do you feel, do you perspire, do you get diarrhea? Okay, so does your heart start pounding? Okay, those would be all items that would assess the somatic aspect. Okay, psychological aspect, or the cognitive aspect is those items that would assess, your thoughts. Do your thoughts race? Do you have negative thoughts? Okay, when you're performing. Okay. So the problem with the self-report test is that they can be not accurate if the person, either consciously or unconsciously, doesn't tell the truth. Okay, it may be because they are faking good, which means that they may answer the questions the way that they think would get them back into the competition. Okay, so if you're suffering from anxiety, but you're afraid that somebody who's using this diagnostically would not allow you to get back in the competition if you're having too much anxiety, you might say, well, my thoughts are good, and I'm not having diarrhea, I'm not perspiring. Okay, the other aspect of that is social desirability. Sometimes with self-report tests, people just say what they think is the right answer. Okay, so how many people want to say, oh, I have diarrhea? Okay, that's not the socially desirable answer. Okay, so there are scales of social desirability too. I'll try to get one online for you so you can see exactly what's going on with the idea of social desirability. The other thing that can happen is that people can't fake bad. For you athletes, you probably are saying, well, why would somebody fake bad? Okay, why would you tell the wrong answers? Sometimes people just don't want some people don't want to be in the competition, so they actually won't have anxiety symptoms, but they'll say, I've got them just to get out of the competition. Okay, so other types of assessment are the physiological ones, so things like the EMG, muscle tension, EEG, electrical activity of the body. Okay, the GSR, galvanic skin response. Okay, so heart rate, blood pressure. Okay, and you can actually measure adrenaline levels too. Okay, so we can measure anxiety both physiologically and cognitively. Okay, so how do we assess all these assessments? The problem is with the physiological measures, they don't always correlate with each other. Some people have different types of responses physiologically, so you could have increased heartbeat, increased blood pressure, but your GSR may not be that high. Okay, or your breathing rate may be okay. Okay, so again, with the problems with the self-report tests, they could be biased, again, consciously or unconsciously. So the bottom line, as shown in the slides, you want as many dependent variables as possible to get a true test of what exactly is going on with the person. Okay, so backtracking a little bit, talking about the Yerkes-Dodson law. Again, what happens with the Yerkes-Dodson law? Certain mental arousal increases in performance until you get the peak level. Then after that, performance starts decreasing. And this shape stays the same, but it does change in terms of where that peak is from athlete to athlete. Okay, so for golfers, for example, the peak level would be lower. For somebody like weightlifters, the peak would be higher. Think stereotypically about golfers versus weightlifters. What weightlifters do as they're lifting the weights, they scream, they yell. Okay, so they're actually trying to increase their arousal level. Golfers, though, if you ever watch golf on TV, you can't make a noise. Okay, the announcers always whisper. Okay, because you don't want their anxiety level to go up anywhere past that low level of anxiety or arousal. Okay, so there are differences between sports. Also, in terms of expertise, beginners, lower level of arousal is their peak. Then medium or intermediate athletes, and then elite athletes or expert athletes, you actually can have a higher degree of arousal where that peak would be. Okay. Also within sports such as football, who would have the highest level of optimal arousal? Well, linebackers, okay, or defensive linemen, okay, because basically their job, I know I'm going to offend maybe some defensive players here, their basic job is to seek and destroy whoever's got the ball. I know there's cognitive complexity involved in terms of your position. Don't yell at me too much, but compare that to what goes on with a quarterback. You don't see quarterbacks running around, hitting each other on the side, on the shoulder pads. Then compare that to place kickers, where you really want a very low level of arousal to be at your peak performance. Okay, so I'd hope that explains the different types of curves that you get with the Yerkes-Dodson. Okay. Then transitioning to the last part of the paragraph in terms of something that's related to the Yerkes-Dodson is what's known as the interfacial zone of optimal functioning, or IZOF. Okay, and that also relates to the idea of flow. Okay, so basically the idea is that there is a peak level of arousal, but it differs from athlete to athlete and situation to situation. So there's actually some really nice videos on flow and on IZOF online. So I'm going to share those links with you, and I'll put those on Blackboard for you guys. Okay? All right, so just one more thing. Here's my TA for today. There's Tegan. Okay. Say hi to everybody. There's Tegan. Okay, so there's my baby. All right, so hope this helps get you through Chapter 6. Okay, and I'll talk to you guys in just a day or two. All right, take care.